Hey, it's Richard again. Welcome back to the channel. As business owners, business leaders, consultants, one of the best things we can do is to learn from others and to learn from great people who've gone before us in whatever our field of expertise is, be it leadership or coaching or consulting or a particular technical field. When it comes to leadership, one of the best things you can do is look back at great leaders in history. And when we think of great leaders, we often think of people like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or maybe Winston Churchill, great luminary characters. Well, I'm going to tell you a story today about another great leader, and probably one you've not heard of, or if you have heard of him, it's certainly not in this context. The person in question's name is Andrew John Ridgeley. Let me explain. Back in the 1970s, in London, in the UK, there was a slightly overweight, very shy, bespectacled young man who went by the name of Georgios Panayiotou. With apologies to any Greek-speaking people listening to this, I did my best. Obviously, that's quite hard to pronounce, so he was generally known to his friends as Yog. Very shy young lad, but he befriended another young lad at school, slightly older, who was named Andrew John Ridgeley. Andrew Ridgeley. They met through a love of music, and that was what really kindled their friendship. And Andrew Ridgeley was the very good-looking, very popular lad at school. And through him, he encouraged Yog to come out of his shell a little bit. And the two lads would talk about their dreams of starting a great pop group, starting a band, making music together. And lo and behold, after some years of friendship and after some years of development and finding who they really were, they formed a band. And you might have heard of them because Yog changed his name to the easier to remember George Michael, and George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley became Wham. You might have heard of them. Certainly, if you were at school like I was in the 1980s, they were massive. I wasn't particularly a fan back then. Virtually every girl in our class was. George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley with Wham were massive. And that only really came about because Andrew Ridgeley had helped George Michael to have some confidence in himself, to learn that he really was a good singer and he really was a good songwriter, and that together they could form this band. And they had enormous success. I think they were the first Western pop group to play in China. They played in Russia. They played all around the world. Massive, massive, huge fame over a period of about 5 or 6 years. And then something else happened. And it sort of became apparent over their career. And the simple truth was this: George Michael was the best singer. And George Michael was by far the greatest songwriter of the two. And tension like that, or an imbalance like that, has led to a great many bands splitting up terribly acrimoniously into fallouts, into court cases and all of that. And that didn't happen with Wham. Andrew Ridgeley realised that George Michael was better at singing, better at songwriting than he was. And so he simply stepped aside and said, you need to go and do this on your own. You can't be everything you were meant to be if you're in a band with me. You need to do this as a solo career. And they had a final farewell concert. They had a very amicable breakup of the band. And then George Michael went on to even greater heights as one of the most famous pop stars in the late 20th century. So why is that a leadership lesson? Well, the leadership lesson is this: it's in the realization that Andrew Ridgeley had that he was holding George back from his full potential. Think about leaders you've worked with. Think about managers you've worked with. When someone in the team is clearly of very high potential, great leaders will build those people up. And then if necessary, they will get out of their way. But this is very uncommon in the world of business. I've worked with far more leaders, and I've worked for far more leaders who are more likely to see someone with high potential and try and keep a lid on them, or to see someone with high potential and shove them off into another department so it isn't their problem to deal with. What great leaders do is they see people with great potential. They encourage them, they nurture them, they help them to find the skills that they maybe don't have the confidence in themselves, but that they do have. They build those people up, and then if need be, they get out of their way and they let them fly. And that's exactly what Andrew Ridgeley did for George Michael. George Michael had a stellar pop career. Without Andrew Ridgeley, there would have been no George Michael. So think about this in your own career, with your own work, with your own teams. Is there someone in your team that you're holding back? Or is there someone in your team with untapped potential that you could nurture? And in doing so, do it with the understanding that one day you might have to get out of their way. You might have to make room for them to spread their wings and to fly. So I hope, again, like I always do, that was a useful little video. Do please do all the YouTube things, like and subscribe. Check out the website. Go and have a look at my website. There's loads of information on there. There's blog posts. There's links to these videos. There's information about other ways that I help small SME-sized consulting businesses, really small, technically focused businesses. Go and have a look. And I will be back with another video next week. In the meantime, have a brilliant week, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.